I'm working on a 2008 Hyundai Accent, and I've done quite a bit of work to it. I put all new belts on it. When I got it, the power steering, when you slowed down just before you stopped, it was really hard, like there was no power steering. And I replaced the belts, and this belt goes to the power steering pump was loose. Once I put the new belt on and tightened it, worked like brand new. And I took one of these hoses off, flushed the power steering fluid, put in clean power steering fluid, and the air conditioner belt there was missing, and it wouldn't shift right. It would always go into limp mode, which I did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos, and it can be a lot of things. So I replaced this sensor, which is the output sensor on the transmission. And then there's another one. Let's see if I can grab it here. This is the input transmission sensor. And it worked for a day or two. I just bought the car to sell it, so I didn't drive it a lot, but I went and drove it and it went back to limp mode again. So I took all this stuff off. There's videos on how to do it. And I was trying to get the cover off the side of the transmission. This is the cover. I watched a really good video, but it was just a little different. In his video, he had some holes up in here so you could access those bolts, which this one obviously doesn't have. And then once he got the bolts out, he pried the cover loose, and it came right out. Well, see if I can see it right here. Here's the piece of metal where you're supposed to, it was sticking out another ½ inch or inch. And see if I can get it right. And you're supposed to pry on that. This thing was sealed up so tight, I broke that piece off. Fortunately, it didn't go into the case. It's going to damage anything. And I had to take off this, what do you call it, control arm, whatever it is. I've loosened up. I ended up taking out this motor mount that sat here and over here. I still couldn't get enough slack. I took the bolt out of the front motor mount, still couldn't get it enough. Went over to this side, loosened up this bolt for the motor mount so I could get some slack here. I changed the angle of my jack different times, lowered the transmission, but kept it suspended, so see if I can get a video of that. I kept it suspended so it wouldn't drop too far down. Finally, after a bunch of finagling, I finally got this cover plate off. And normally what happens is, when you change your transmission fluid, which I did, and the filter, there's 5 magnets in the bottom of the pan. And you will find metal shavings in there, pieces of metal that come off of a bearing that sits right here. Well, I didn't have that, so I thought, good, I don't have a failed bearing. But it still would not go. You could drive it for ½ a mile and it would shift gears, and then it would go into like neutral, and then back to the safety mode, which is 3rd gear. And I said, I just can't figure it out. So I figured, well, for 20 bucks and $16 for shipping, I got this replacement bearing I'm going to put in here, just in case it wore. But there's no bearing in here. When I took it apart, it had already failed. It's all gone. So I'm guessing somebody changed the transmission pan and filter and cleaned it out and never bothered to research it and find out why it did that. Unless they just didn't want to go to the work I've gone to. That could be it. So I bought it from the guy knowing it had a transmission problem, just not knowing what it was. So if you guys have a similar problem and you don't find any pieces of metal, maybe somebody already serviced it and that's why it's in limp mode. So I'm going to put this thing back together with the new parts, and hopefully this thing will shift. All the videos I've watched, guys that did this, they said it fixed the problem. You get a P0734 code, which is incorrect gear ratio or something like that, but it goes 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and it tries to go into 4th, and it's like you threw it in the neutral, and then it just drives around in third. So you could drive it around in third. You don't have a lot of power starting off, and you get down the highway about 60 miles an hour, you'll be cranking out 2,000 RPMs because it won't go into fourth. But hopefully, if I think about it, when I get all done, I'll test drive it, see if this fixed the problem. But I'm telling you, the other video I watched is a 2004, and the difference between the 2004 and 2008 evidently is a lot, even though it doesn't look like much, because this gap in here, I'll show you, oh, if I don't fall down. When those gears are in here, you end up hitting this frame right here, and you cannot get the cover to go off between the frame and the gear that sticks out. It only gives you a little bit of room. So if you're trying to do this like I did, you just have to be patient and keep taking things apart until you finally get enough slack it'll come off. Now putting it back together, that might be a different story. Hey, you guys have a good one.